There's a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with physical work. It's that feeling at the end of the day when you're just mentally drained. It comes from spending hours inside your own head, replaying conversations, analyzing little moments, basically running a marathon without ever leaving your chair.
Maybe it was a simple text you sent, and the reply was just one word, okay. And suddenly your mind just spins out. You start cross-examining that single word from every possible angle. Was that a cold okay? Was it a dismissive one? You build these entire stories around it, and yeah, a part of you knows it's probably nothing, but logic isn't really in charge anymore, is it? The thought loop has taken over, and your quiet evening is suddenly hijacked by all this mental noise. So today, we're going to look for a way out of that noise. We're not looking for some abstract philosophy, but a clear, practical map. And that's why we're digging into the ideas in The Overthinking Cure by Nick Trenton. The goal here isn't just to understand why our minds get caught in these traps, but more importantly, what we can actually do about it, moment by moment.
So first, who is Nick Trenton? Well, he holds a master's in behavioral psychology, and that's really the key here. His whole focus is on translating these psychological principles into practical, science-backed tools that you can actually use. He writes for people who want to manage their internal world, especially when things get stressful. And that context is important because it tells us that the solutions we're about to explore aren't just feel-good advice. They're grounded in how our minds actually work.
Okay, let's dive into the core of the problem. Trenton frames overthinking not as some personal failure, but as a trap. And weirdly enough, it's a trap that often uses one of our greatest strengths, our own self-awareness, as the bait. This quote from the book really gets to the heart of it. Trenton is super clear. Thinking is not the enemy. Thinking is an incredible gift. It's how we solve problems, how we grow. But overthinking? Well, that's its unproductive cousin. It's when that powerful mental engine gets stuck in neutral, just revving and revving, going absolutely nowhere. It just burns fuel and creates a lot of noise, draining the very power it's supposed to give us. So let's get really precise about this. Overthinking isn't just thinking deeply, it's an uncontrolled pattern. The real difference, according to Trenton, is the outcome. Productive thinking moves you toward clarity or a decision. Overthinking, on the other hand, keeps you stuck. It just creates more confusion, more anxiety, and eventually this state of mental paralysis. And that's that frozen feeling, right? When you can't make a simple choice because you've analyzed it so much that every option just feels wrong. This diagram shows exactly how the trap works. It starts with something simple, like that okay text message. Step 2, the analysis begins. You're not just thinking about it, you're performing a full-blown investigation. This then opens the door for step 3, doubt and insecurity. Suddenly, it's not even about the text anymore, it's about your relationship, your communication skills, maybe your self-worth. And that brings us to step 4, where the original thought comes back, but this time it's magnified. It's louder, it's heavier, and it's carrying all this new negative emotion. That's the loop.
Now here's a really crucial insight from the book, and honestly, it's a compassionate one. Overthinking isn't a sign that you're flawed or unintelligent. In fact, Trenton argues it's often the opposite. People who are highly self-aware and conscientious are more likely to fall into this trap because they process things so deeply. Their analytical ability, when it's not directed, becomes the very thing that traps them. And this is a huge reframe. It shifts you away from self-blame, that feeling of what's wrong with me, and towards self-understanding. Okay, this is how my mind works, so I need a better strategy to manage it.
So, if we're caught in this loop, how do we get out? The first instinct is usually to try and fight the thought, to just force it to stop. But as anyone who's tried that knows, it usually just makes it stronger. Trenton suggests a totally different approach. The core shift isn't about stopping thoughts, but about skillfully redirecting them.
This simple chart basically says it all. The old goal, the one that never works, is trying to stop thinking. It's that classic don't think of a pink elephant problem. The more you try not to, the more you do. It's a battle you just can't win. The new goal is so much more gentle and effective. Just guide your attention somewhere else. It's a move from forceful resistance to gentle redirection.
And the tool for this is what Trenton calls the observing self. Now, this isn't some abstract mystical concept. It's simply the part of you that can notice your thoughts without becoming them. It's the ability to step back and just witness your own mind. It's the difference between saying, I am anxious and I am noticing the feeling of anxiety. That little bit of space you create between you and the emotion, that's where all your power is. The storm of thoughts can be raging, but the observing self is that calm center that doesn't get swept away. Now, we have to be intellectually honest here, and Trenton is in his book. This is not a magic wand. Developing that observing self is a skill. It's like building a muscle. Some days it'll feel easy, and other days it'll be a real struggle. The goal isn't to achieve some perfectly silent mind. The goal is just to get better at noticing when a thought is hooking you, and then developing the ability to gently unhook yourself before it drags you down that same old path.
So what does this actually look like? Here's the first concrete action. It's a simple 3-step process. First, the moment you realize you're spinning, just name it. Mentally say to yourself, this is overthinking. The act of labeling it creates that little bit of space we talked about. It puts the observing self in the driver's seat. Second, don't argue with the thought. Just acknowledge that it's there, like a cloud passing by. And third, gently shift your focus to something physical and neutral. It could be the feeling of your feet on the floor, the weight of your hands in your lap, or the temperature of the air. This simple act grounds you in the present and breaks the loop's momentum.
This brings us to the next big idea from the book. If overthinking leads to mental paralysis, then the most direct cure isn't more thinking, it's action. Not necessarily some huge life-altering action, but small, deliberate movements that break the stalemate. This line right here is maybe the most important one in this entire explainer. We tend to think we need to analyze our way to clarity before we can act. We wait for the perfect plan. Trenton flips that completely. He argues that clarity is a result of action. You don't figure it all out and then move. You move, and in the process of moving, you start to figure things out. Action gives you feedback, it gives you data, and that's what creates clarity. To make this really practical, Trenton offers this simple but pretty powerful framework. The whole point is to stop the endless deliberation over things that drain our mental energy. For small, low-stakes decisions, like what to wear, give yourself a hard limit, 30 seconds. For medium decisions like choosing a restaurant for dinner, maybe 5 minutes. And even for big decisions, setting a time boundary like, I'll review this job offer for 24 hours and then make a call, it prevents it from spiraling into weeks of agony. So here's your second action. Actually try this out. This week, pick just one small, recurring decision that you tend to get stuck on. It could be what to eat for lunch, which task to do first, whatever. When it comes up, just set a mental timer for 30 seconds, make the choice, and this is the most important part, commit to it and move on. The goal isn't to make the perfect choice, it's to train your brain to be decisive and to build momentum. This idea of limiting time leads right into the next concept, limiting the number of choices themselves. This can feel a bit counterintuitive. We're always told that more options means more freedom, but Trenton argues that actually, real freedom often comes from setting smart limits for yourself. The psychological reason for this is something called decision fatigue. Think of your willpower and your ability to make good judgments like a battery. Every single choice you make, no matter how tiny, from which shirt to wear to which brand of coffee to buy, it drains that battery just a little bit. Having too many choices doesn't empower us, it just exhausts us. It drains the battery faster, which leads to worse decisions later, or just avoiding decisions altogether. And I'll share a really simple example of this from my own experience. For me, this shows up most clearly with something as simple as trying to pick a movie to watch. I can spend an hour scrolling through all the options, watching trailers, reading reviews, and it often ends with me watching nothing at all, feeling more tired than when I started. It's the paradox of choice in a nutshell. The sheer number of options creates this low-grade stress that makes the easiest choice, doing nothing, feel like the best one. And here's another one of those moments for intellectual honesty. This advice from Trenton is specifically about managing the small daily choices that pile up and cause fatigue. This is not an argument for being impulsive with life's biggest decisions, career moves, major commitments. For those, deep thought is absolutely necessary. The idea is to save your mental energy on the small stuff so you have a full battery for the things that really matter. Okay, so we've talked about redirecting thoughts and taking action, but what do you do in that acute moment of overwhelm, when your mind is just racing about something in the past or spiraling about the future? Well, Trenton offers a powerful technique to pull yourself back to the only place you have any real control, the present moment. This type of tool is known as a grounding technique, and the idea is incredibly simple but so effective. When your mind is lost in these abstract worries, you can anchor it by connecting to your physical senses. It works because it's really hard for your brain to be stuck in a what-if thought spiral and intensely focus on concrete sensory information at the exact same time. It's a way to interrupt the loop by focusing on what is right here, right now. The method is super straightforward and easy to remember, which is exactly what you need in a moment of stress. Wherever you are, just pause. Look around and silently name 5 things you can see. A book, a lamp, a pen. Then notice 4 things you can physically feel: the texture of your shirt, the floor under your feet. Next, listen for 3 distinct sounds. Then notice 2 different smells. And finally, acknowledge 1 thing you can taste. This simple sequence basically short-circuits the overthinking brain by pulling it fully into the sensory world of the present.
As we bring these ideas to a close, the most important thing to remember is that this isn't about perfection. It's all a practice. These are skills you build over time. The goal isn't to become some perfect, non-thinking robot, but just to have a better, more skillful relationship with your own mind.
So, to quickly recap the big takeaways. First, remember, overthinking is a habit, a feedback loop you can break. It's not who you are. Second, the goal is always gentle redirection, not fighting with your thoughts. Third, clarity comes from taking small actions, not from waiting for perfect analysis. Fourth, limiting your daily choices is a superpower for reducing mental fatigue. And finally, use grounding techniques to anchor yourself in the present when you feel overwhelmed.
So if there's one thing worth remembering, real growth begins when an idea is quietly applied, not loudly admired.
If you found this insight helpful, liking this explainer is a great way to support our work. And be sure to subscribe to Daily Book Insight for more deep dives into transformative ideas. We've also put together a simple 1-page action plan from today's insight, and you can download that for free using the link in the description below. Thanks for your time and your attention.